good morning and welcome to another session of business research. And I hope you remember in first part of Unit 4 in survey design, we discussed validity and reliability in detail. Plus, we discuss how to design and develop a questionnaire. So we have attributes, nominal, interval, ordinal, and ratio data. And with these attributes, we define different items. And finally, we were able to design the questionnaire for our survey. Now, in second part of survey design, we need to understand that with the help of questionnaire, what we supposed to do, we supposed to collect data. Now, whenever we are trying to collect data, it is not possible to collect data by one individual. Maybe I receive one project, so for me it's not possible to go and collect data from the respondents. So generally, whenever we receive any project funding from ICSR, UGC, DST, so there is a scheme that you can hire few people and they may be designated as research associate, research assistant, and field assistant. So these field assistant people or scholars, they can go to field and they can collect data. So what you need to do when you already have your questionnaire with you, you know your sample, you know your sampling, who gonna be a response, who gonna give response to your questionnaire, and these things are clear to all of you. Now second thing is who will collect the data on your behalf. So if you have sufficient funding and in when you receive funding, it's clearly mentioned in the clause or scheme that you can hire few people, those who will assist you in desk work and field work. So here we need to organize this field work. These people, uh, they go to field, they talk to people, but we need to train them in a sense that whenever they go outside and collect data, they need to take consent from each and every individual that we are conducting this survey, and this the survey is just for the purpose of academic activities, not for minting money at all. So we need to organize this field work, and generally what happens in advance through telephonic call or maybe through email, we take consent from a person that our representative, he or she will visit you to collect information from you, and we will have a questionnaire. So these kind of questions we will be asking, so please give us reply. So if they give reply that yes, we don't have any objection and you can come to us and we can give you the response as per your questionnaire. So this generally happens, but now because of COVID-19, physically we are not able to go and meet people. So what we do, we develop this questionnaire on Google, uh, what do you call, Google form, and circulate to concerned people. So before you send to the concerned people, what you need to do, you need to take consent in writing that okay, this questionnaire I have developed, designed, and I request you to fill out this questionnaire. And the motto of this questionnaire is to find out some solution or propose some kind of schemes, or we have these objectives, and we request you to fill out this questionnaire, and the information collected from you would be kept will be kept secret, right? We are not going to disclose to anyone, and the purpose of this kind of survey is not at all commercial. So these things we need to mention. So we are actually, what we are doing, we are organizing the field work. So where to go, how to approach, this also a very important thing, because nowadays what happens, because you have your mobile phone and people can access you through your mobile phone, anyone can access you through your mobile phone, and generally these business organization, service organization, every day I believe you receive 2 or 3 call to receive to get loan, or for some other purpose, right? Some other activity. So you are fed up with this kind of activity and you feel that these calls whenever you receive, right, they put you in trouble. So why to receive this kind of call, or why to see this kind of email, and why to respond to this kind of email? So generally we float this kind of questionnaire on LinkedIn, or maybe through Facebook, right, or through email also, email account also. You send this kind of email and give the reason that for what purpose you are conducting this kind of survey. So you have now two options. One is virtual through email, LinkedIn, or through Facebook, or maybe through other social media platform. You can send questionnaire or survey to your respondent. Second, physically you're supposed to go. Maybe you cannot go, but your representative or field scholar, they can go and collect the data, but they need to maintain the ethics, they need to maintain the code of conduct. So whenever they supposed to approach respondent, they need to take care that they are not disturbing them, and before you actually physically visit them, you need to take permission in advance that we are coming for this particular purpose. So you need to be very honest. You need to be very honest, because here these people, the respondent, gonna give you a very important information, their opinion, their like, their dislike, and sometime you ask for demographic profile, they give you demographic profile also. So this is your duty, that you are not going to misuse the information or the data. So now, who would be the people, those who on your behalf will visit a field or respondent and will collect information through survey? So before you select them, generally what we do whenever we get project, we advertise this vacancy, these positions, that we would be needed these many people. So you have thorough rigorous selection process through advertisement and through interview. So you select few people and train them, because you cannot give a questionnaire, hand over questionnaire to a person and ask them to go to respondent or go to field and get it done. Before that, you need to train them, because whatever questionnaire you have given some kind of coding to your questionnaire, right? So which question you need to ask first, which you need to ask second, and how to fill out that coding, that also a very important thing. So before you send your questionnaire and an individual to a particular person or to the field, you should have right selection process, and then once you have selected a person, you need to train them that how to approach individual, how to approach respondent, and how to take consent from them, and finally take their responses in terms of filling out the questionnaire. And then you need to supervise all these activity, because actually if something went wrong, right, then who would be responsible? Ultimately it would be your responsibility, because you are the principal investigator, right? So those who are presenting your organization, those who are visiting people to get response, or the respondent to get response, they should be trained in such a manner that they need to follow code of conduct, ethical values related with research and publication. And plus, as a supervisor, you need to supervise all these activity, and you need to keep eyes, you need to keep some check on these field workers, and time to time you need to evaluate their performance. Maybe yes, we judge them, we see their performance in terms that how many questionnaire they were able to get filled, but beside that, how did they get it filled? So we need to check, we need to monitor their work. So we need to see that, or we can cross check them, that whenever they visit a particular respondent, we can have a number of the respondent, and we can call them, and we can interact with them that our representative visited you on this particular date to collect information from you, and then you can see you can take the feedback about the field worker. So this is a very important process, because your research would be totally rely upon the information you collected through your field worker, field supervisors. So how to select them, what kind of training you need to impart to them, how to supervise them, and finally how to evaluate them. You should have this. It's a very integral part of a data collection process. So you need to develop this process and procedure in such a way that you have a right people with you, and you provide them a right kind of training so that they can collect a right kind of information, and finally this information you can evaluate for your analysis, right? So this is a very important part of data collection, that you should have these people, these kind of people. Generally what happens whenever you give this kind of responsibility, this kind of work to third party, now third party, what they do, they hire people, they give some kind of a training, but there is a problem how reliable these people would be, how reliable the information they are collecting would be. So you need to keep eyes on these activities, on this procedure. So you should have very reliable, honest people with you, and because if they give you wrong information, if they collect wrong information, or it's called fabrication, right, falsification basically in technical term, so it will really uh, it will create a problem, because you don't understand what kind of data you have collected, and when you analyze your information, your output would be something else. So here you need, because on the one side your research process is okay, right, you have a right kind of method to select sample, you have selected a right kind of people, right, and the sample size is okay, that technical terms are perfect. But here now you have to take action. When you go and take action, you need to see, because here you are interacting, here you are in field, and practically you are collecting information and data. If that data is wrong, if that data is not sufficient, and it's full of error, and it's a duplication of information, or mis, uh, misinterpretation of some information when you collect data from your respondent, then what is use of this information? So here we need to keep eyes, we need to understand this process: selection, training, supervise, and evaluate field worker, because they actually represent your work, and they represent your information to respondent. Now this is their duty. The way you want this message should be communicated to the respondent, the same manner they should understand as a field worker and communicate to respondent. And second very important thing, that the way the respondent wish to give information, wish to share his or her information, the same way you should understand and write it down, and finally convey to the principal investigator, or the co-principal investigator. So now you can realize, now you can see how important these people are, how important is data collection process. So data collection process is not only important because the kind of survey you have, the kind of questionnaire you have, the kind of people, the target respondent you have, but more than that, those who are in the process of collecting information on your behalf, they should have such kind of training, they should follow such kind of code of conduct, and they should know how to collect information. And so here you can see, this is a something which play a very important role in your research. So it is basically a data collection, and when you think of collecting data, you need to organize this field work. I remember when I started one project called Motra, and it was about women empowerment. So I had two field worker, not a field worker, research assistants, and they say they, sir, it's very difficult whenever we call uh, on a number. So generally, male member they pick up the phone, and when we ask that can we talk to your, uh, the female member, so they say that you can ask a question, we can give you a reply. So this was something that those, I mean, especially our respondent were women entrepreneurs in NCR. So, so it was very difficult for these two researchers to collect information. It was because the topic was about women empowerment. Now you are collecting information from male member. So how are you gonna justify your information? So now it took them some time. You call and request them that can we talk to you. They say that now we are busy, so you can call another time. So another time whenever you call, so they are not ready to pick up your phone. So lot of things are there, but here you need to tackle this problem. You need to understand this problem, and you need to approach people, and according to their convenience you need to collect the information and data. So I hope this is clear to all of you, that whenever you conduct a survey itself in terms of questionnaire and method, sample, these all things are important. But beside that, when we have a human interaction in terms of collecting data, and that is basically a kind of action performance in the field. So there also, because here this would be the most difficult task, because here suppose you have 300 sample size, so that means you want to talk to 300 people, and these all people would be having different kind of characteristics. So some can say that okay, we give you right now information what you are looking for. So other can ask a lot of questions but not ready to give you information. So here we should be very honest, because it's all about research ethics. If you don't follow this research ethics, somewhere actually you are conveying a message that in future if someone else is conducting a research on these respondent, then these respondent would be aware that they can give a false information. And sometime there have been some research where you give some kind of incentive. Incentive may be in terms of some kind of gift, right? Not very costly gift, very small amount gift, or maybe some kind of schemes. You will see that okay, if you do like this, you're gonna have this kind of services. You can avail this kind of services. So we have this kind of survey also, where you're gonna get some kind of gift, some kind of incentive. But in our research, you will see you don't have that kind of funding where you give some money to the respondents. So generally we don't do, and this kind of money is not at all assigned in your project. But those who are in marketing research, the big marketing organization, just to motivate you to participate in the survey, offer you some kind of maybe a coupon, maybe a discount coupon, or maybe some kind of incentive that okay, small gift, very small gift, so that you can participate in the survey, right? But in our research, in our academic research, you will see we don't have that kind of money. We don't have that kind of funding, that we cannot give this money or gift or any incentive to your respondent. right? So this was something I thought before I enter into sampling error and non-sampling error, I should give you some perspective of data collection. The data collection is not about only designing a survey in terms of questionnaire and finding out the respondent target market who would be your sample. Beside that, whenever you go and collect data, this whole process, human interference, interaction play a very important role. So let us move and comes to second slide. Is it visible, everybody? Non-sampling error slide. Okay, fine, thank you. Now what is this sampling error? And there are two terms, because here we are talking about sampling, who gonna be our respondent, how we select these people. And in last class, I hope you remember, we have discussed two different methods. One is random sampling, one another is non-random sampling, or probability or non-probability sampling. So sampling means actually you are working on few people. These few people would be a representative of a whole population. And when you give an outcome, that outcome you assume that now you are talking about the whole population. So see here two differences, and we are trying to interlink these two differences. When you collect data you are collecting from a sample, and when you give output you assume that this output would be there in the population also. So on the one side you have a limitation because you cannot collect data from each and everybody in the population, so better you select a sample. So how representative this sample would be, that is the big question mark, right? So is it truly representing the whole population? So in my understanding, you cannot have any possible method through which you can actually see the true representation of a population in your sample. There will always be a chances that something is missing. That may be because of different reason, right? You don't understand that what actually you are covering or measuring. You don't understand that, so that is also somewhere linked with the sampling. So we have two kind of error whenever we conduct a survey. It's linked with sampling sometime, and sometime it's linked with the non-sampling also. So first we start with these error. So whenever you conduct a survey, you must know that these kind of error would be the obvious error, because you are not collecting data from each and everyone. Rather, you are collecting information from few, and you presume that these few people are representing the whole population. But in actual reality, whenever you decide that instead of collecting information from the whole population, you're gonna collect data or information from the sample, then you will see it's implied that there would be some kind of error. So let us see what kind of error would be there in your survey. So first we'll talk about non-sampling error, right? So what is this non-sampling error? Why we have this non-sampling error? Is it because you have not taken a right kind of sample? Is it because you haven't taken a right people, those who are representing the whole population characteristics, right? So let us see what kind of error we are looking, what kind of error we are discussing here. So is it linked with sampling, or beside that there are other sampling also, there are other errors also which are not linked with the sampling. So we call them non-sampling errors. So non-sampling errors refers to all sources of errors that are unrelated to sampling. So it is not actually related to sampling. So then what is that? So non-samplings are present in all types of survey, including census and administrative data. Now whenever you collect data, there would be always a chance, because uh, it's not because of you haven't taken a right sample or right sample method, but there may be other chances also. So what are these? They arise from a number of reasons. So here you see, first, the frame may be incomplete. The question you have asked, the number of questions you have been asking, these are not sufficient. Some respondent may not give accurately report or data, right? So these are not related with the sampling. Data may be missing for some respondents, etc., right? So you don't have sufficient questions, right? So the whole questionnaire is incomplete. Some respondent may not give you the right info, accurate report data, right? Data may be missing for some respondents. So this is what, this is not because of sampling method, this is non-sampling error. Now non-sampling errors can be classified into two groups. First is random errors and second is systematic errors. Now the problem with this method is this problem is that random errors are errors whose effects approximately cancel out if a large enough sample is used, leading to increased variability. So to minimize the errors which is there because of non-sampling, because of not ask sufficient question, or because people haven't given response, so what you do, if you go and increase your sample size, right, increase your response size, then in that response increase size, large size will take care of this kind of problem, right? But here you see have another problem. A systematic errors are errors that tend to go in the same direction, and those accumulate over the entire sample, leading to a bias in the final result. So suppose you have asked a question in such a way that you will see answer would be always yes. So it is kind of what? It's a bias, right? So this whole sample will go in a direction where you will have an answer yes, which would be a bit kind of biasness. So this is what, this is a systematic error, that you have created a systematically error in all questionnaire. It's linked with the questions, or maybe some method that throughout, if you increase the sample size and that go for large sample size also, you will see that error will remain there. I hope now you understand. Random error will take care, where if you go for a higher sample, then there would be not a problem, but in systematic it will remain there, because the way you have asked question, the way you have defined the question, it is creating some biasness, right? Now unlike random error, this bias is not reduced by increasing the sample size, right? Systematic errors are the principal cause of concern in the term of a survey data quality. So random error are not a big, issue, because when you go and increase your sample size, it will take care, because the large enough sample will take care of that error. But if you continue with a systematic error, so that's why whenever you design a questionnaire, you are required to discuss that questionnaire with the uh, senior, right? So that these experts, these people, those got a expertise in that particular field, can help you that you can take this question or you cannot take this question in your questionnaire. Or if you are going to design a particular questionnaire first time, then what you need to do, you need to collect data from 500 people or more than that, and then you go for exploratory factor analysis to see, to check whether there is any systematic error or not. So but generally what we do, we need to talk to expert instead of going for exploratory factor analysis, because exploratory factor analysis will also not give you the right answer if you go for systematic error. So better would be you talk to that's why we do a pilot study, sometimes respondents give you information that I'm not able to understand the question you have asked, this question is bit biased. So here you should have some kind of pilot study plus the expert opinion for your questionnaire will take care of this systematic error. And the problem with the systematic error is that if it is there, then if you go for large enough sample, it will not take care of that. Unfortunately, non-sampling errors are often extremely difficult. It's not impossible to measure, right? So let us see what kind of non-sampling errors we have. Non-sampling errors can occur in all aspects of the survey process and can be classified into following categories. First, coverage error, that you don't have cover the concept actually. Measurement error, you haven't measured it rightly, right? That means somewhere linked with your questionnaire in terms of measuring the construct, measuring the variable, right? So non-response error, right? You define a question in such a way respondent they are not able to understand, so what will they do? They will leave it, they will not give a response. Or maybe questioner is so sensitive that people avoid answering the question, right? So and then processing error, when you process it, for example, there may be instances that you have taken stratified sampling and or suppose you have taken a random sampling, right? In random sampling there is a problem that sometimes it is not covering the whole population, in the sense, for example, we have, like in my own college we have 5,000 students, right? When you go for a random sampling table and out of 5,000 you take a sample size of a 500, what it will do, it will show up to 3,000 number, suppose starting 3,000 students, remaining 2,000 it will not cover, right? So it may be a link with your processing, or that you haven't processed, you haven't taken a right kind of sampling method, or sorry, the what you call processing, or the what you call the this what you call randomly you haven't taken these right people, right? Or you don't have that representation. So you have a coverage error, you have measurement error, you have non-response, and then you have processing error. That processing error also can be a coding, encoding, right? The way you have defined the questionnaire, right? And the interlink among the questions. So that is basically a processing error. Now coverage error consists of omissions. So under coverage, erroneous inclusion, duplication and misclassification, or over coverage of units in survey frame. So generally what people do, they say that 30 is a sufficient sample size. Suppose you have 90 questions and you take a sample of 30 people, then do you think it would be a sufficient? On the one side, suppose you have a 40 questions in your questionnaire and you take 200 people response, will it be sufficient? So here we have a coverage error. Suppose you have 40 questions and you have taken a sample of 2000 students, right? So now you need to decide through a right process, right method, that are you covering for your research purpose number of people response, are they sufficient? So here it's about that, okay, uh, you have right kind of questions with right kind of response. Since it affects every estimate produced by the survey, they are one of the most important type of error. In the case of census, it may be the main source of error. Coverage error can have both spatial and temporal dimensions and may cause bias in the estimate. The effect can vary for different subgroups of the population. So here coverage error can be like you cover whenever you go for collecting data, especially case of survey and census, who come out and give you information, generally a male member, right, in some area. So there they may not give a information about a female member, so that would be a coverage error, that it's a under coverage because they are not allowing the female partner to give you the information. And secondly, one person is giving information about all family members, like for example, so whenever you ask the date of birth of a child, so parent may not give you a right answer because they may have some issue with the year, which year the child was born. So here it's a erroneous information. So better to reduce this error, we need to talk to the concerned person only. So here this is a problem, that you have a subgroup, maybe a community, maybe a gender wise, maybe you can divide into some other on the basis of some other characteristics. This error tends to be systematic and is usually due to under coverage, which is why it's important to reduce it as much as possible. So this is basically coverage. You need to make sure that you cover all representative of the population or the target population you have. If you are not going to cover that, for example, I discuss generally when you conduct a survey in an industry, who gonna give you response? A male, because we have a female, maybe you are not going to approach a female at covering the information from female. So it is your responsibility that you should have a coverage of all the uh, male female in terms of gender, and maybe if you divide the whole population on the basis of a different profile segment, then you should have representative or coverage of all the sections of the society. Now second is, so this was the measurement, the coverage error, that are you covering each and every unit or the representative of a particular community, particular society or particular population, right? And not only in terms of profile, but in terms of the proportion also, or the number also, right? Then it will give you a right kind of information. Then we have a measurement error. Measurement, also called response error, is difference between measured values and true value. So actually you understand a term, for example motivation we have discussed, satisfaction, quality. So these all constructs when you measure, and the person who is giving response, how does he or she understand that? How do they give response to that particular thing? So here it play a very important thing, that you need to understand that you need to give a response in such a manner. Just give me 1 minute. Sorry, let us continue. So here you need to give a response in such a way the question has been asked, but before that you need to understand whether your questionnaire or questions are actually measuring the right term, right, or measuring the value or the true value. So it consists of bias, sometime, and variance. So if you're not capturing the right term with your questions, then what will happen? It would be a kind of bias. It would create a variance, and it result when data are incorrectly requested, provided, received, or recorded. So if you request a particular person to give information and request is incorrect, I mean the form of asking questions are incorrect, then it's a trouble. Then they will provide a wrong information. The way sometime coding decoding also make the problem in a measurement. So these errors may occur because of sorry, inefficiency with the questionnaire, the interviewer, the respondent, or the survey process, right? So let us take a 10-minute break here, then we will continue today. Okay, just give me break. Let us take break. Okay, so we started with the measurement error, and before that you have seen we were talking about coverage error, and we are talking about non-sampling error. So this we already have covered. Now it's about measurement. We were talking about measurement, that these errors may cause because of inefficiency with the questionnaire, that the questionnaire you have developed and designed, it's not right, or there are some questions which are missing, and these questions are not actually measuring what you are looking for. And on the other hand, those who are taking interview, they are not sure that what they have been asking, what they were talking about, what actually they are measuring and capturing. And on the other hand, when you ask a question to a respondent, the respondent is not able to understand. So they give you a wrong information, wrong opinion, and wrong data. So here you see a little bit more about this measurement error. First, as we have discussed questionnaire, if your questionnaire design is poor, for example, here you can see it is essential that sample survey or census questions are worded carefully in order to avoid introducing bias. If questions are misleading or confusing, then the responses may end up being distorted. So this is very common because sometime you ask more than 100 questions, so respondent will not give you response, right? Or the way you have asked, it's misleading, confusing, making you bit confused, then the information you're going to provide, it would not be authentic or right kind of information. Or the way you have asked a question, the answer would be a bit biased, then the answer, the questionnaire design is not proper. So you should have a proper questionnaire design. Then second, interviewer bias. The way interviewer asks a questions, the way he influence. So here you can see an interviewer can influence how a respondent answer the survey questions. This may occur when the interviewer is too friendly or aloof or prompt the respondent. To prevent this, interviewer must be trained to remain neutral throughout the interview. You must have seen nowadays television news channel, and every day in the evening from 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock you will see uh, there have been a lot of debate, lot of discussion on a different current topic. But you might have noticed one thing, the way these people, the host, they ask a question, right? You will see these questions, they are trained in such a manner that some news channel hosts are neutral throughout the interview, but most of them are not neutral, they are biased towards a particular concept or particular topic of a debate, right? That's why you must have seen the participants, those who are debating there, they have been, the way you have asked a question, actually you are forcing them to leave the newsroom, right, or the debate place. So a lot of people now, those who come for debate on a particular topic, they leave on during the discussion because they feel uncomfortable the way interviewer asks the questions or the way they behave. So they must also pay close attention to the way they ask each question. If an interviewer changes the way a question is worded, it may impact the respondent answer. So many times these participants, those who are participating in a debate, they give a response that don't put your words in my mouth. Right, you're trying to put your words in my mouth. So this is what here many times you will see interviewer are biased and they are looking for a response towards a particular direction. So this you need to be very careful because it's not a news room or it's not a news channel discussion or debate, but here actually it's a research, it's academic research. So in academic research, those who are taking interviewer should not be biased and he should not try to influence the respondent the way they want or they wish. So here you should be a neutral. Now here's very important beside this, when you are talking about measurement error, the response error. Respondents can also provide incorrect answer. So sometime you are not in a good mood or you have had some kind of instances where you felt that that has impacted you a lot. So there may be a different situation for a respondents, which is why they intend to give you incorrect answer or information. So faulty recollections, tendencies to exaggerate or underplay events, and inclination to give answer that appear more socially acceptable are several reasons why a respondent may provide a false answer. So this is very common. This is very common inclination. It's very common thing that you don't want to lose face, right? When you are working in a team and you need to give answer in a in front of in front of your colleague, then you don't want to lose your face. So that is somewhere inclination towards a social what do you call political correct answer you give sometime, right? So this is here the information you give, the information you wanted to give, you didn't give, and you give answer in some other way. Then we have problems with the survey process. Errors can also occur because of a problem with the actual survey process. Using proxy responses, meaning taking answer from someone other than the respondent, or lacking control over the survey procedures are just a few ways of increasing the risk of response error. So you yourself fill out all the questionnaire, proxy response, right? Not taking information from right person, right respondent, right? So this is all actually a problem with the survey process. Then so this was basically a coverage, then measurement. Now we have non-response error. Estimates obtained after non-response has been observed and imputation has been used to deal with this non-response are usually not equivalent to the estimate. Generally what happens, you might have noticed that suppose you collect data from 1,000 people and out of that 50 people had not responded to that. So what you do generally? You estimate, right? You estimate that when 950 people have responded in such a manner, the other 50 also has responded in this manner, right? So here you obtain the estimate, and then you fill out the information which has occurred because of non-response, right? So this is very common practice in statistics, right? So this is basically what you estimate that would have been obtained had all the desired value been observed without error. So this is very common that because if you don't have that 50 people information about a particular question, then it will create a problem because it would be a kind of non-response. So here you estimate, you predict that other 50 also would have given the same way. So this is a very important error, that you estimate obtained after the response has been observed and imputation has been used to deal with the non-response. And you feel that it would be equivalent to those who had given the information, right? Now, difference between these two types of error estimate is called the non-response error. So this is basically a non-response error. You are looking for something and you don't get that response, and finally what you do, you fill it out with the estimation. These are two types of non-response error, total and partial. Let us see. The total non-response error occurs when all or almost all data for a sampling units are missing. Sometimes you get totally a blank questionnaire back. So this is what total non-response. This can happen if the respondent is unavailable or temporarily absent. The respondent is unable to participate or refuse to participate in the survey, or if dwelling is vacant, if a significant number of sample units don't respond to a survey, then the result may be biased, since the characteristics of the non-response may differ from those who have participated. So this happens many times, that your total response is blank, no response, right? So as we have mentioned here, respondent is unavailable or temporarily absent, and they refuse to participate sometime. So now if you see here those who have participated, you cannot come to a conclusion on the basis of that, because here a lot of people, they have not responded to your questionnaire. Now it is a total non-response. Then we have partial non-response error, occurs when respondents provide incomplete information. For certain people, some questions may be difficult to understand, and sometimes they don't want to give information. This is also another issue. So they may refuse or forget to answer a question. Poorly designed questionnaire or poor interviewing techniques can also be reasons which result partial non-response error. To reduce this form of error, care should be taken in designing and testing questionnaire. An adequate interviewer training and appropriate edit and imputation strategy will also help minimize this. So generally, if you want to see that whether your questionnaire is capturing what you are looking for, and the way we have designed question, it easily, the respondent, they would be able to understand. And what you need to do, you have two techniques as we have discussed. You show this questionnaire to expert. Expert will read it carefully and will give you a suggestion that okay, these many questions are perfect, they are actually interlinked and capturing a particular variable or construct. Second way would be that you make a pilot study, because uh, in second method, where you have a pilot study, actually you are going to field and collecting information from the respondent. So here, if respondent are leaving one question blank or the whole questionnaire blank, that means there is some issue with your questionnaire. And sometime, as a researcher, when you design a question, you don't find that fault. But when you go to a field and conduct a pilot survey, then respondent, when they are not able to figure out what should be the right answer, or if they are not able to understand the question, then they will give a response that they are not able to understand this. Tell me what is this question all about. So then it would be a kind of, you need to take care of that error. Then after coverage, measurement and non-response error, we have processing error. Processing error occur during data processing. It includes all data processing activities such as collection and prior to estimation, such as error in data capture. So it is mostly about when you code, you are going for coding and editing and tabulation of data, as well as in the assignment of survey weight. So here basically we are talking about the way you have coded your questionnaire, right? So that you need to be careful, because as it is, you cannot put your questionnaire into SPSS or R. So generally what we do, we define different attributes in terms of nominal, ordinal, interval or ratio scale. And then what you do, you put this attribute in terms of codes, and that codes actually you transfer to the SPSS or R programming, and that R programming or SPSS, they understand this coding. So there may be some issue sometime. You will see that this coding has been designed or developed in such a way that sometimes you don't understand how you design this coding. So for that, there is a term in SPSS called uh, value, where what you will do, you will describe that coding, that this one means this, two means this, or other coding also you will define over there, right? And then the whatever tabulation, whatever cross tabulation or other tabulation you have, that you need to describe, and then with the help of that you can minimize this processing error. The coding error occurs when different coders code the same answer differently, right? So sometime generally it happens that when you vote, cast your vote, so nothing is mentioned whether you need to put cross or tick. So you need to clearly give that this kind of coding, this kind of tick or cross you need to mention, or other coding you need to give. So coding error occur when different coders code the same answer differently, which can be, so you wanted to give right or cross, so you don't know whether you want to select it or you want to select it. So you need to give a instruction carefully with one code only, that if you want to select it, say right or give cross only. Sometimes you give that both you need to do, define with yes, tick or cross. So coding error occurs when different coders code the same answer differently, which can be caused by poor training, incomplete instructions, variance in coded performance, right? Data entry error or machine malfunction. Some processing error are caused by error in computer programs. So generally when you do it in R programming, you need to carefully write the instruction. Otherwise it will not process. So there may be some processing error. Sometime you are looking for some other answer and something else come out. This is because of proper coding and the way you write the instructions in a R programming. And then the data capture errors result when data are not entered into computer exactly as they appear on the questionnaire. This can be caused by the complexity of alphanumerical data and by the lack of clarity in the answer provided. The physical layout of the questionnaire itself or the coding document can cause data capture errors. The method of data capture, manual or automated, for example using an optimal scanner, can also result in error. So generally what happens when you have a questionnaire, first what you need to do, you need to convert, because SPSS has two what you call sheet. One where you will define the data, or the other sheet would be for uh, you know putting that data. So when you define your data, you need to be very careful, right? uh, so actually your software is actually capturing the data. So how you put that information, into SPSS manually, you need to put. Generally manually we have a questionnaire, we see each and every question, answer of each and every question, and then manually we feed the data. Then we have editing and imputation error. This can be caused by the poor quality of the original data or by its complex structure. When the editing and imputation process are automated, errors can also be the result of faulty program that were insufficiently tested. The choice of an inappropriate imputation method can introduce bias. Errors can also result from incorrectly changing data that were found to be in error or by erroneous changing correct data. So this is very common thing, that whenever it's not about interpretation. Basically interpretation is something else. So whenever you are editing data, whenever you are putting in, it's generally about coding, right? It's about coding. So whenever you go for coding or feeding data, whenever you edit your data, you need to be very careful, because here you are playing with data. Suppose you have 90 questions and 1000 response, so you multiply 1000 with 90, you will see it's a big huge data, right? So you need to be careful when you are editing it. And so this was non-sampling error. Now we have a sampling error. Sampling error is the error caused by observing a sample instead of the whole population. This is what, as I mentioned, that if you see some problem, and it's very common, you cannot minimize it, you cannot make it zero, because it would remain there, because your data is basically, you have taken from a sample, and the result outcome you are reflecting on the population. So it's not possible, right? It's not possible the way your whole population would be reacting, behaving the same way your sample would be, because sample, it's always some error would be there. It arises from estimating a population. So actually generally what we do with this statistical tool and technique, we are estimating a population on the basis of a sample. So always there would be a chances, you take a sample from one particular sample, then second sample, third sample, always you see a difference. So it arises from estimating a population characteristics by looking at only one portion of the population rather than the entire population, and refers to the difference between the estimate derived from a sample survey and the true value that would result of a census of the whole population were taken under the same condition. So suppose you have 5000 students, now you take a sample of 500, then second you go and take another 500 sample, third you go and take another 500. You will always see that these 500 student you take from a 5000 population of a college, you always see that these 500 are somewhere representing the whole population, but accurately 100% they are not actually representing the whole population. And what you do as a researcher, you say that whatever these 500 people are saying, you assume the 5000 would be also saying the same thing. So it's not necessary. So this sampling error remain there. So there is no sampling error in a census, because the calculation are based on the entire population. So if you go for a whole population, then there is no error, no problem, and you don't need to go for any advanced tool and technique, because here the whole population is here with you and you have a data. So the problem arises, you go for hypothesis testing, you go for other technique tools and things, advanced tools and techniques, because instead of collecting data from the whole population, you are just collecting data from the sample only. So that's why you have to justify that whatever sample is saying, same thing would be occurring in the population also, but this is not so, and always you will see this is a sample error. Now, how to estimate the sampling error? Any estimate derived from samples are subject to sampling error because only a part of the population was observed. So here you are not capturing the whole 5000, instead you are just capturing information 500. So you will always see that there is a chance of error. A different sample, so now this is 500, then another 500, then another 500, from 5000 a different sample could have come up with different estimate. Sampling error cause variability among the estimate derived from different sample when keeping the same sample size and design and the same estimate methods. Other things remain constant, still you see there is a sampling error. It measured commonly by the sampling variance, which depends on many things including the sampling method, the estimation method, the sample size, the variability of the estimated characteristics. So we have some other factors which actually capture the magnitude of this sampling variance. In general, sampling variance decrease as sample size increase. So this variance will decrease as you go for more and more and more sample. Population size has an impact on the sample variance. For small to moderate size population, for large population, its impact in minor. Variability of the characteristics of interest in the population also affect the size of the sampling. So actually, when you see the heterogeneous population, so it's very obvious that variability of the characteristics would be high. When you see the homogeneous, there you will see the variability would be less. And it's also based on the size of the sample. So if sample size is high, then variability would be less. The greater the difference between the population in it, the larger the sample size required to achieve a specific level of preciseness. Other factors, you can see we are continuing with that. A sampling plan, which include a sample design and estimation procedure, also affect the magnitude and sampling error. So which sampling plan you have used? Random, systematic, right, strata or cluster. So the method of sampling called here use sample design can greatly affect the size of the sampling error. Survey involving a complex sample design could lead to larger sampling error than a simpler one. So the estimation procedure also has a major impact on the sampling error. These concepts are examined in greater detail in the sampling. So if you go on to talk about more about this in future, I hope we'll have some other discussion that would be only on sampling. So we stop here because we are not going to discuss univariate analysis. Next class we'll talk about univariate analysis. So we stop it here today, and thank you very much, and we'll have one more class on Monday and we'll complete this univariate and the other part of the last unit. Thank you very much for joining today.